Today we're going to look at a full Chaturthamsa chart. And just like the Hora, Drekana, and the Rashi chart, the Chaturthamsa has widespread ramifications. It is not just for studying one house, it's not just for studying Mercury or the fourth bhava, even though those are the foundations of the Chaturthamsa. It's really for looking at all areas of life, because you can be fortunate in anything. Whatever house and whatever house lord and whatever planets are strong in the Chaturthamsa are simply where you're going to have more fortune, better luck. And just like the, Rashi, Hora, and Drekana influence everything on our life because of how we are to some degree, the Chaturthamsa also influences everything in life because of how we are. Because how we are determines our fortune. Okay? So to say, we make our own fortunes through our behavior. And when it comes to making fortune, what's required to be fortunate in life? Well, we know Mercury is the most important planet, and that tells us that what's required is that we use our Mercury as well. And that basically means we play the game of life well. Okay? And if we think about it, that's really true. If you play the game right, if you just play the game of life the way it's set up in your culture, you'll be fortunate. You know what I mean? Now, probably a lot of us people who are doing Vedic astrology aren't playing the game that right because people, we're drawn into alternative studies. But if you look around, or maybe you actually have a good Mercury in your Chaturthamsa, if we play by the rules, we're going to get fortunate. We're going to get the house, we're going to get the car, we're going to have the luxuries of life, we're going to make our fortune. And so, when we look at a person's Mercury, which has to do with their foundation for good luck, for fortune, above and beyond having their needs met, we're basically looking at their ability to play by the rules that end up providing fortune. Now, of course, life is not all about being fortunate and having a house paid for and having money in the bank. We all know that's not the purpose of life. It's certainly a nice thing to have in life regardless of our goals, because it can give a more harmonious foundation to those goals, but it's by all means not necessary, and it's not the goal of life. So there's nothing wrong if you've got a terrible Chaturthamsa and you don't have something that makes life feel really fortunate. But it is a nice thing. And if a person's not having those things, really to get those things really requires that a person just starts playing by the rules that eventually lead to those things. Okay? Not overnight necessarily, but eventually. Okay? Alright, so with that said, that's the reason why we can look at the Chaturthamsa for anything and everything. It will influence everything. If your 7th house is really good in the Chaturthamsa, all other factors equal, you're going to have a better relationship. Okay, so if you see 2 Navamshas or 2 Saptamshas, 2 relationships at Vargas that are the same, but one person has a good 7th in the Chaturthamsa, they're going to have a lot more happiness and fortune in their marriage life. Okay? Alright, so to start with, we'll look at this person's Mercury. Mercury, I'm actually going to pull the Rashi chart up here in the middle. Mercury is conjunct the Sun. Okay, so we have to keep that in mind. It's agitated by the Sun, right? It's conjunct the Sun. And we'll see that the Sun in the Chaturthamsa is very strong. It's exalted. So Mercury is going to be agitated. And this shows that, to some degree, this person's not going to play by the rules of life. Okay, why? Because they got a strong Sun. They got a strong sense of dependence, a strong sense of confidence, a strong, desire to lead and be in control of their own life. They're a solar person. Just like the king makes the rules, he doesn't play by the rules, this person's going to be inclined to be that way too. They're going to be into following what they think are the right rules, and not so much whatever the rules of the game are. Okay? And because the Sun's exalted, this person will have noble ideas of the right rules to play the game by. What's important, and not just playing the game the way it's written. Okay? And that's true for this person. They have a more independent, assertive nature, that they're not just going to do whatever the rules dictate. Okay? So Mercury gets agitated. Mercury's not going to have as much fortune as a result of that. However, the Sun, well, the things it's influencing in the Chaturthamsa and the bhavas it rules, the person will have more fortune with those things because of the fact that the Sun is going to do some good in the Chaturthamsa. Okay? So it's a good and bad thing. It's bad to Mercury, but good for the Sun. Life is always a give and take. We give up one degree of fortune to have another type of fortune in this case. Other than that, Mercury is in a natural neutral sign, so he doesn't get any delight or starvation. He's just neutral. He's aspected by his enemy Moon, who's very strong, but just to mediocre 4 points, so not enough to really hurt Mercury too much. He's aspected by neutral Mars and neutral Jupiter. So Mercury is pretty much in, neutral dignities, a little bit of, agitation from the Moon, because the Moon's a malefic, he's waning in the Rashi chart, but a lot of agitation from the Sun. So it's an agitated Mercury. It's not a person who's going to play by the rules. They're going to play by what they think is the right thing to do. Okay, and those things, those ideals will be good, solid ideals because the Sun's exalted, and they'll be intelligent because the Sun's exalted. And remember, Parashar tells us the Sun is intelligent. That's the nature of the Sun. And the Moon is all-knowing. So this person's intelligence and all-knowing will keep them from playing the game according to the rules of life, the rules of their culture. Mercury rules the laws of man. And so it will frustrate Mercury, and so Mercury will be agitated. And in Mercury periods, where the periods in life where they'll pay for doing things the way they think they should, and therefore have less fortune, whereas in the periods of the Sun and Moon, well, Sun and Moon are going to create the fortune for them because they're obviously in good dignity. Okay? So Mercury's not good. He's an agitated Mercury. So we know the person's not going to have the full fortune possible in their life, simply because they don't play by the rules. Now, the fourth house is the next really important thing to look at. The fourth house is aspected by exalted Sun to 35 points, so it gets a lot of bolster there. By Mula Trikona Moon, so a lot of health there. By Mars, who's in, we can see the dignity in a great friend sign. So Mars is helping, but only to a mediocre 3 points. By Mercury, who's in a friend sign, to 43 points. By Jupiter, who's in a friend sign, great friend sign, but just a mediocre 7 points. By Venus, who's also in good dignity in a friend sign, to 34 points. Saturn to 39 points, and Saturn's in good dignity too. So wow, every planet in this chart's in good dignity, which means every house is going to have strength to it. There is no, there is no bad house in this chart. This person's going to be more fortunate than average in everything in life. However, we still have the planets warring over each other. We still have Mercury getting agitated by the Sun and Moon. And we're going to have other bad Lajitati Avashtas of other lords. So how do you read that? What do you do with that when you see the houses are all great, but the planets are still at war? And that's a common thing. So it's, really can't believe I haven't talked about it previously. But it is really important. So what that means is that the bhavas will be good. The concrete things, they'll be fortunate with the concrete things. Meaning they have the concrete thing. It's there in their lives. Okay? But the planets are the consciousness. The planets are our consciousness, our intelligences. The bhavas aren't. The bhavas are just the things that are outside of ourselves. Well, the planets are also the forces within ourselves and our consciousness and our intelligences. And our self, of course, with the Sun and Moon representing the self. The other 5 planets, Mars, Mercury, Jupiter, Venus, and Saturn representing our intelligences and different kinds of consciousness that make us up to a single being. So, those aspects of ourselves are at war. They're never completely in peace with each other as long as we live in a plane where there is planets, okay, meaning as long as we live on an incarnated plane. And that's why we have the Lajitati Avashtas, and that's why we have friendships and enemies and planets wanting this and this planet wants this. Sun and Saturn want different things. They represent 2 parts of human consciousness that are simply contrary to each other. So they're constantly at war with each other. Okay? So while those two things may be in good dignity, like it is in this horoscope, therefore they're going to create fortune to the bhavas they influence. But at the same time, the consciousness that the person approaches those bhavas with will be different. So for instance, Mercury is in good dignity. He's in a friend sign. He's helping a lot of bhavas out. He's helping out the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, and 11th bhavas. He's helping almost all of the bhavas to a decent degree. So he's going to help those bhavas be more fortunate. But Mercury's never going to really feel totally fortunate. He's going to be agitated and feeling like something's wrong with his fortune, not completely at peace with his fortune, even though he's going to have great fortune. He's going to have lasting wealth. He's going to have lasting happiness. He's going to have all those things. But he will still feel some, agitation at that, a lack of peace. Because the sun is so strong, and that sun is the soul. It wants something real, something really tangible to the sun, something beyond the material, concrete fortune. And so there'll be a restlessness that agitates Mercury. Mercury, who himself could just be happy playing the game of life and juggling all the great fortune he has in life and finding that to be plenty of reason to live. But the sun can't do that. And any planet that sun's with, gets that desire for something, more spiritually real ultimately. Okay? And so it's frustrating to the planet joined with the sun. So we have those tensions. So even when you see charts where all the planets are in good dignities, and therefore all the planets are going to produce concrete effects in that Varga, that doesn't mean we're going to have peace. We're still going to have frustrations and agitation and starvations and thirst. We're still going to have bad Lajitadhyavashtas. In fact, sometimes we'll have more then because the planets are so strong, the war is bigger. And that's why we see people who have every fortune who still aren't happy. And why the rule is, you can have everything in the world, which is going to be given by planets in good dignities, which thereby strengthen all the bhavas. So you have all the things of the bhavas. But you're still not going to have happiness, because now you've just got stronger planets warring within you. A person who's got planets in bad dignities, and therefore has very little fortune and material things and concrete things in life, is still going to have bad Lajitadhyavashtas, and their conscience is still going to be ruffled and unhappy. So the only difference is it strong planets ruffling your consciousness or weak ones? You're going to be miserable either way, ultimately on planet Earth. Okay? So when we look at bhavas, we're predicting the concrete fruits of our life. When we look at the planets, we're looking at the consciousness that is enjoying those fruits. And that's why Parashar uses these interesting words for the avashtas. Starved. We feel starved. We're hungry. We're hungry. Or we're agitated. Or we're thirsty. Or we're ashamed. Or we're proud. Or we're delighted. These represent states of our consciousness that give happiness or unhappiness. Happy or unhappy states. Okay? So this person's going to be fortunate. But they're still going to be agitated. Mercury still won't have full joy. They won't be able to just have fun playing the game of life because Mercury is agitated. If Mercury in the Chaturthamsa is just such a nice planet for playing the game of life and having so much fun with all the fortune of the world. But that strong sun and strong moon are not going to allow that because they're agitating Mercury. Okay? So the fourth bhav is fortunate. How about the fourth lord? Importantly in this chart, the fourth lord is also the first lord, an important bhava in the Chaturthamsa. And one other thing I wanted to make, the first bhava has the sun and Mercury in it. Mercury's in a friend sign, sun's exalted. So this is a strong first bhava. This person is fortunate with their body. And they are. They've, not had physical ills. They haven't had bad accidents. They haven't suffered physically a lot. They have siblings and parents who suffered dramatically, had way less fortune with their body. The person's attractive. the person gets acknowledgement. Life is easier for them. Women help him out with anything where he's at, simply because he has a handsome appearance. He's fortunate with his body. His body doesn't cause him aches and pains. He hasn't broken it, because it's a good fortunate Chaturthamsa. And of course, we have to look at other Vargas too, because you could have that but still have an accent or something. But based on the Chaturthamsa, it looks nice. And like I said, he benefits from his appearances and stuff. Okay. The first and fourth lord is Saturn, who's in a friend sign in Gemini, and therefore he's mudita. He's delighted. Saturn's joined by Venus in the Rashi, and Venus, fortunately, is in a natural neutral sign in the Chaturthamsa, so he can help Saturn. Then Saturn's influenced by Jupiter in neutral and by his enemy Mars. And since Mars is in a natural friend sign, and therefore sleepy, he has enough power to hurt Saturn somewhat. But overall, there's more friendship on Saturn, because he's in a friend sign and he's joined with the friend Venus, that this is a mudita, delighted Saturn, which is a little bit of starvation. So this helps the person be happy with their fortune. Their fourth house is the fortune itself that gives you happiness. And they're happy with their body, but in a Saturnian way. They live simply. They find there's a lot of fortune to just living simply. They're not the one that wants lots of possessions in their house. In fact, they're constantly getting rid of things the minute they don't need them anymore, because they find a lot of fortune in simplicity. They have this simple attitude. And simple living is the key word for a good Saturn always. Simple, detached happiness, rather than overwhelmed by too many possessions type happiness. Saturn will never do that. Other planets might, but Saturn won't. Okay? So, it's a nice Saturn that helps them enjoy their fortune in a simplistic way. Okay? The other important bhava is the seventh, ruled by the moon. Let's look, and of course the seventh bhava is good. It's influenced by 7 very powerful planets, to a good amount of strength. So they're very fortunate in 7th house affairs. This person is adored by their clients. How adored are they? Well, one client has put this person in their will for a property that's worth $10 million. Figure that, right? Remember I said the Chaturthamsa is has to do with property. It's a Varga that has to do with property, things that are lasting. So the public, the people that know him, and it's, again, the public at large always responds really well to this person because of this beautiful 7th house in the Chaturthamsa. Okay? Now, so he's very fortunate with people, with other people, 7th house. Okay? 10th house, Moon also rules the 10th house, which is the house of respect. So he's very fortunate in being respected. And this person always gets respect wherever they go. Okay? Surprisingly, because when you look at his Rashi chart, see some funny things here, don't we? In his Rashi chart, we've got Sun debilitated in the Lagna, which gives a sense of weakness to the person. Sun debilitated there, right? The Lagna Lord is debilitated, and it's joined with Saturn. The Lagna Lord is starved. So when you meet this person and you really examine them, you'll see these funny things. And if you really know this person, you'll wonder about how they're just so damn fortunate with people, And this is a client I've known for years and years and years and years. And so I know him really, really well. And, knowing this debilitated Sun and knowing the debilitated Venus with Saturn, I know their idiosyncrasies and weaknesses. They're there. But still, they have this great fortune of this beautiful 7th house and beautiful 10th house with the Moon in Mula Trikona that has really helped them be fortunate with other people. Way more than I would have ever expected possible had I just met the person and, say, known them for 5 years. It's really quite interesting. It really shows how powerful this Varga is for creating fortune. Now, the Moon itself is joined with Jupiter and his neutral Mars. Jupiter's going to help, okay, because Jupiter always helps. Jupiter's in a natural friend sign in the Chaturthamsa, so he's going to help the Moon quite a bit. Then the moon is not aspected by any planets, but it's Garvita, proud, and Mudita by Jupiter. It's a proud and delighted seventh lord. They have great fortune from people, okay? And for future dashas, that fortune is going to increase quite a lot, okay? And they've already been quite lucky. So it's a beautiful seventh bhava. So all the important bhavas, the first, fourth, and seventh, are in nice shape. The bhavas are great, and when it comes down to our happiness and the degree, the happiness in our consciousness, the lords of all four of those are great too. Okay? What else is really strong? Well, the sun's exalted. So we got Garvita about the sun. The sun rules the 11th house and the 8th house. The 8th house, of course, is other people's money, and the 11th house is your gain in income. And the 8th house represents inheritance, right? And the 11th house again. So we really see this person is going to have the fortune of inheritance. Like I said, somebody has put them in the will for a very, very valuable property. So there's the chance that they may get kicked out of that person's will. There may be a chance the will gets contested. There's all these possibilities. What would your prediction be? Well, my prediction is that Mars, which rules real estate and property, is in Leo, ruled by the sun, who's exalted. I would bet that they're actually going to inherit that property. They're going to have the fortune of inheriting property. Okay? We have inheritance because we got this strong 8th sign, which rules the Jupiter-Mars in the Chaturthamsa. And Jupiter-Mars is conjunct in the Rashi. Anytime you get Jupiter-Mars conjunct in the Rashi chart, it's a combination that can give wealth. Okay? Here, both those planets are in good dignity. Okay? They're both in a natural friend sign. And their lord, the sun's exalted. And the 8th lord. So this person has some seriously good inheritances to come into their life. Okay, so very fortunate person with respect to that. Now the sun is influenced by friend moon to 8 points, friend Mars, friend Jupiter, and enemy Venus just to 1. So this sun gets so much delight upon it, and just a little bit of trouble from Venus. Don't even matter, 1 point, big deal. So this is a very fortunate and proud sun. So 11th house and 8th house affairs, which are inheriting things from other people, gain from other people, and gains from other people money, is going to be really, really a favorable thing for them. Okay? And that's one of the really strong things. And we also see that the moon is really strong too. So what's the worst dignified planet in the chart? Well, Venus is not as good dignified. Venus is in a natural neutral sign. Venus is conjunct Saturn in the Rashi chart. So Saturn's going to starve Venus. Okay, and Saturn's in a natural friend sign. So he's pretty strong to starve Venus. So Venus is starved by Saturn. Venus gets neutral by Mars and no help from Venus, because those are both neutrals. So here we have a bad planet. We have a starved Venus. And we also had a starved, the other planet we had starved was Mercury. Mercury was agitated. So the two fun-loving planets in the chart, Venus and Mercury, the two of the big benefics are Mercury's agitated and Venus is starved, right? So we can see how this person won't necessarily be able to fully enjoy all their fortune in life. They're going to have great concrete fortune. They're going to have land. They're going to have big inheritances. But they won't be able to enjoy all that fortune. That fortune just won't mean everything to them because Venus is starved. So when Venus is starved in a chart, you can never appreciate what you really have in life. Venus is about finding fulfillment in the things that life gives us. Okay? Venus and the moon are both fulfilling planets that make us feel happy. That's why they have Digbala in the 4th house, the house of happiness. Okay? If based on the Shad Balas. Now, both those planets, Venus is about getting emotionally fulfilled and fulfilling our needs in the world. That's why Venus rules marriage and relationships, which is the huge area of emotional fulfillment. And Venus knows he has to pay for that fulfillment, that he has to do his share in the partnership, do his share in the relationship. And he is also a caring, benefic planet that wants the other person to be fulfilled too. But Venus does indicate the level that the material world that can fulfill us. That's why you see people with afflicted Venuses going through lots of marriage partners and lots of partners, because they never are able to find fulfillment in any of them. And then they think something's wrong with the partner, so it's natural to move on to the next. But the problem is when Venus is starved, is that Venus itself, it just doesn't have the capacity for that fulfillment. Okay? The best thing to Venus is an aspect of Saturn, believe it or not. Because the aspect of his friend Saturn makes Venus realize and appreciate the value of the things he has and not take them for granted. When Venus doesn't have the aspect of Saturn, it's really easy for Venus to not take things for granted, to have a great wife but not really totally appreciate her or something. However, when Saturn's conjunct Venus, according to Lajitati Avastas, Saturn always stars the planets he's with. That's really bad. And this person has Saturn conjunct Venus in the Rashi. So this person's capacity to really be fulfilled by the things of the world is starved because of Venus. So they're never going to really totally feel fortunate no matter what they have, because there's still going to be a longing inside of them, a desire for love that they're not getting validated. Okay? Venus represents our self-worth. Their self-worth won't be completely validated with all the fortune that they're going to get in life, because Venus is starved by Saturn, and Saturn's making them feel a lack of self-worth inherently. And feeling that inherently, no matter what their fortune is in the world, they will never feel fully worthwhile and a valuable human being, because Saturn is starving Venus, unfortunately. Okay? So Venus is starved. Venus doesn't rule any bhavas in the Chaturthamsa. Okay? Which means that there's no bhavas that will be strongly impacted by Venus' starvation. But Venus as a planet will be. So where they're going to be starved is in the things that Venus rules. Most important of those is marriage and spouse or female partner. Okay? And that's been true for this person. They never feel fulfilled with any of the partners they have. And so they have less fortune in that area. Sure, they get fortune from having a great girl because the 7th Bhava cusp is nice. But they don't really find fulfillment in that. They don't have the fortune of the fulfillment that comes with that because Venus is starved. Okay, so we're always looking at two things. We're looking at the concrete thing, and we're looking at our ability to enjoy that concrete thing. And in that, Venus is not good because he is starved. Okay? Unfortunately. So that's the worst part of the Chaturthamsa. Again, Mercury is agitated too, so Mercury is not great. Now, Mercury gets agitated by 6th house and 9th house. Okay? And so 6th and 9th house affairs will be a source of agitation. Okay, 6th house is lawsuits, court cases. 9th house is parents, fathers, influence to some degree, religion and belief systems and path. So Mercury is going to be agitated in that. The person, though intelligent and having lots of good qualities, hasn't, hasn't had the fortune of a strong spiritual path. 9th house thing, because Mercury is agitated. Okay? In the sub-period of Mercury, which is the 6th lord, they are very agitated due to a court case. Okay? They didn't lose the case got dropped, they didn't lose any money in it, but they were extremely agitated by the problems that case brought up, okay? Or by the issues of that. So they will be agitated on account of 6th house and 9th house affairs, and not find really peace there. What is agitated? Well, agitated, we can look at, means we can't operate at our finest there. It's an area where we always fail, okay? And that failure causes pain. It also can be an area where we're never able to make the right decision. So this person will have a lack of fortune compared to other areas of their life in 6th and 9th house things, okay? And so while this person, does some yoga, and why this person, does some of that stuff, it's not something they've embraced. It's not something they've really been able to make a commitment to. And one of the reasons is this lack of fortune in that area, in their lives, lack of fortune in their teachers. They'll eventually become agitated by their teachers, which means they'll want more than their teachers have to offer, because this strong sun is giving it. Their teachers won't adequately be able to satisfy their need for, satisfy their intelligence and the answers that intelligence wants, which is going to be high because the sun's exalted here. Okay? So, those are the two troubled planets here. Now let's look at Jupiter. And again, this person is going to be fortunate and luckier than average in every area of life, simply because all the bhavas in the Chaturthamsa are in good condition. Okay? But they're not necessarily going to find happiness with all those things. Mercury and Venus are not going to give happiness. They're going to have agitation and starvation. Jupiter's joined his friend Moon and friend Mars, so he's very delighted. He's in a natural friend sign who's exalted, so he's very delighted there. Then he's aspected by his enemy Mercury to just 3 points. Not going to starve him at all, considering how strong he is, because he has 3 good doses of friendship. Mars and Moon, and then being in the Sun sign. So that's a very delighted Jupiter. So the person will find lots of happiness and delight in Jupiter things. Okay, well, Jupiter's 3rd house. Well, that's their siblings. Okay, they really feel lucky with their siblings, very fortunate with their siblings, in fact. And ironically, in the family of this person, while some siblings have occasionally had quarrels that lasted a few months, this person hasn't had a single issue with any of their siblings their entire life. They're always the one that gets along perfect with whatever sibling they're spending the time with. Okay? Where all the other siblings have had at least one, if not more than one, quite serious thing that raised some serious issues. This person's just much more fortunate with their siblings, 3rd house things, than they are with, than the rest of their family is. Okay? 12th house things, expenses. They're very fortunate in expenses, unnecessary expenses, just not really being a part of their life as a rule. So this is a great Chaturthamsa all in all. Okay? And they find a lot of fulfillment, delight with respect to their siblings. They're very generous with respect to their siblings, as we'd expect from the Jupiter also ruling the 12th bhava, the house of charity and giving and spending. They're always the one to give the most to their siblings. And in general, with most people, they're just very generous, and they find a lot of delight in that generosity. Again, because Jupiter is very delighted. So a really nice Chaturthamsa. And you can begin to get the idea that we can do a mini reading about this person just based on Chaturthamsa. The habit is, okay, I'm going to read about you and look at your Rashi chart. And then I'll maybe predict some other things like marriage on your Navamsha and children, conception on your Saptamsha, and your times of career success based on your Dasamsha, and some health problems based on your Trimsamsha, and so on and so on. But the truth is, we only read one part of the person's life from the Rashi chart. Then we read a part from the Hora, part from the Drakana, and part from the Chaturthamsa. After we've read those 4 charts completely, that's the point when we're really, really ready. That's the point when we've really completed getting a foundation understanding of who they are and what they're really capable of. Okay? All those 4 vargas plug into that. Okay. Fourth Varga is how fortunate is the person. That's a big part of your life. Just how fortunate are you? You know, the Rashi chart is the path, but how much fortune is along the way of that path? That has a huge impact on everything in your life. So it is an important foundation Varga. Now, as I've mentioned, Rashi, Hor, and Drekana have had common use and mentioned in the ancient texts. Fourth Varga hasn't had any. Okay, but it's equally important. It's an important thing. All right, finally, let's look at some of this person's Varga deities. Okay, we have got in the first one, which is Sanaka, which means exists from the beginning. We've got Mars, Jupiter, existing from the beginning. Okay, so Mars and Jupiter will give them qualities to enjoy from the beginning of their lives. Okay, now an interesting thing here is I spoke about that one of the things involved in Mars is their inheritance for property, right? It's ruled by the 8th Lord. It rules the 8th Lord in return. And it's in good dignity, and it rules property. So they're definitely going to inherit some property. But this property they're going to inherit is going to be indicated by Mars, by Rishi Sanaka. You know, Mars is in Sanaka's Chaturthamsa, which means exists from the beginning, something that's always been there. And this indicates that this person will inherit family from their father, or property from their father, no doubts about it. Property, in fact, that the father bought even before this, surprisingly, even before this child was born. Before this child was born, the father actually bought several properties. They've always been part of the family, and one day they'll belong to this person directly. Okay? So, we have that Sanaka quality revolving around martial property type things. Okay? Jupiter is also in the Sanaka Chaturthamsa. Okay? So, this person is going to have ideals that they've sort of always grown up with. Okay? This person's ideals honestly have not changed in the years and years that they've been on planet Earth. They grew up with these strong ideals and convictions of what was the righteous thing to do, you know, what to believe in. And they've always just sort of maintained those ideals. They haven't dramatically changed them. They haven't been constantly renewed. They've just been an anchor in the person's life. Okay? And these were its own. Jupiter represents our intuition and faith. And those are things that come due to an inner connection. So this person has had that inner connection that made them, you know, believe and feel about things in a certain way. That's been a very stable thing since the time of their very, very early life. Okay? To put it another way, they've been the same type of good person their entire lives. Okay? In the Sananda Chaturthamsa, there's Venus. Okay? Consciousness of bliss, having joy. So relationships are going to be a big factor in that. You know, relationships, well, it'll be a joyful aspect of life. What'll make a person feel fortunate in a relationship is that it's really joyful. However, we've seen, and that's the desire of Venus, but we've seen that Venus is starved, right? Which simply means the person will get upset because the joy, expected joy and bliss of a relationship is not going to be as good as expected or as much as expected. Because again, Venus is starved. So the joy that the relationship gives won't be as validating as they expected. That's the right way to say it. So what happens is, whenever this person gets involved with somebody, they have expectations for how much happiness this person is going to give them. And they never experience the expected happiness. So it ends up being a disappointment. In a nice relationship, an ideal relationship, you meet someone, you go, yeah, I really, really like them. And then as you spend more time with them, either your expectations for how wonderful they're going to be in your life is what you believed it was, or if you're very lucky, it's even better. Okay? And you're like, wow, it's even different and newer and better than I expected it. So either one of those cases is great. But this person, it's the opposite. Because Venus is starved, they never get the fulfillment from their Venetian things that they would have expected to. And even with other Venetian things, like when they bought a new car, it never turned out as great as they expected it to be, okay? Because Venus is starved. So Venetian things are just not going to give the joyful expectations that they get set up for, okay? Because of Venus being starved. In Sanat Kumara, we have the sun, okay? That's the only planet in Sanat Kumara. Sanat Kumara is the ever-new, things that always give something new and unexpected, okay? So 8th house and 11th house things will always be new things that this person gets. Unexpected things, unexpected forms of income, unexpected gifts from other people, always new things happening in this context. The 8th house also has to do with, benefits from other people. That's basically, 8th house is other people's resources. And in our lives, it represents benefits we get from other people, the good things that other people give to us, other people's responsibility towards us. Those are all 8th house things. So with the sun being exalted and in such great, Lajitadhyavasha as we looked at, and in the Sanat Kumara, the ever new, person's always getting surprised with the benefits that they get from other people. So it's really a nice part of their fortune as well. Here's another surprise of another person being a huge benefit in my life. Okay? The Sanatana, the everlasting, Chaturthamsa, we've got 2 planets in that. It looks like Moon and Saturn. So those represent the everlasting things. Now, remember that the 4th Chaturthamsa falls in the 3rd Drekana. And the 3rd Drekana is always something that's going to be under transition, right? Because Rishi Durvasa is going to be there to curse it along its destiny, okay? And make it happen what's supposed to happen. So there's an element always of transition, change, and loss in any planet in the 3rd Drekana. And that planet is going to always be, not always be, but any planet that's in the Sanatana, the everlasting last 4th Chaturthamsa, is going to be in the last Drekana too. It's going to be cursed by Durvasa. So when Durvasa curses a person and everything goes wrong in their life and they suffer some losses, the person still walks away with something though. What do they walk away with? They walk away with what they're most fortunate with. And that's what the planet is in the Chaturthamsa, and which is therefore falling in the Sanatana Chaturthamsa. Got it? So, person's always going to walk away with 10th house, respect. Okay? Even when something ends in their life, like they leave a job or they, something transitions, if it's caused by the moon, they're going to leave with respect. Okay? Because the moon rules the 10th, and the moon is in great shape. So the everlasting thing that they're going to leave behind them based on the moon will be respect. With respect to people they're with and the public that knows them and their partners, they're going to leave with respect. They'll be respected. They'll be considered worthy people. 10th house thing. They'll be considered as a powerful influence, because the 10th house is power and command, our ability to make changes in ourselves and other people. It also represents the good deeds that we do, most importantly. So this person is always going to be remembered for the good things they do. They have that fortune of that. And they'll always take with them the 10th house things they took with them, which is the power, the capacity to make things happen. The 10th house is the house really of capability. The first house is the path we're on. The 10th house is just how capable we are on that path. Okay? And of course, the 10th house also represents the father. And this person's close to their father. So, through the transitions of life, they've always maintained a strong link and connection to their father, because moon rules the 10th house in the Chaturthamsa, and the moon's in great shape. Okay? Okay, now then, the other planet in the Sanatana, the everlasting Chaturthamsa, was Saturn. Okay? Saturn we've seen is in good dignity because he's conjunct Venus, his friend in the Rashi, and Venus is helping Saturn. And Saturn's influenced by his enemy Mars, but just a little bit of starvation. Overall, Saturn's a decently delighted planet, quite decently delighted, because it's also in the sign of Jet Mercury, which is his natural friend. So there's two good doses of friendship on the Saturn. So Saturnian things will be everlasting. Okay? Saturn rules the second house and fifth house. Second house is friendships, right? How will these friendships be? They'll be Saturnian, which means they'll be simple friendships. Friendships based on simple things in life, nature, for instance. Saturn always represents the great outdoors. Interestingly enough, this person has so many lasting friendships from the time of their youth with people that they spend time in the outdoors with. And these people are all over the U.S. now, but they'll still make week-long vacations at least once a year to go hang out with these buddies and have these everlasting friendships. And that's really unusual for this person because of the fact that the rest of their family members, from the parents on, including all the other siblings, are not in touch. I think actually his sister is in touch with maybe one or two of their friends from the beginning, but in touch, not where they actually are buddies and hang out and make efforts to spend time with each other. So this poor person is really fortunate in having everlasting friendships in their life. Friendships that last through the transitions and changes of life. Their siblings don't have the second lord in good shape in the Sanatana everlasting Chaturthamsa. So they don't have the fortune of their friends lasting and lasting. Okay, when they go through transitions, usually their friends are left behind or changed. But this person's unique in that. And again, like I said, they're a Saturnian thing because the friendships revolve around nature, and they'll meet and go camping for a week or go do this trip out in nature or go hunting or something like that because this person hunts, They're all Saturnian type of friendships. And they're lasting. This person doesn't have a record of losing friendships. People become their friends or their friends long down the road. So they're very fortunate in lasting friendships. Again, friendships can be fortunate because we've always had them, because they're always bringing new things into our life, because they just make us really happy, or because they're lasting. For him, it's because they're lasting, because Saturn is the second lord of friends. Okay? So again, we can just get so much information from the Chaturthamsa that we're not just going to get from the Rashi alone. Just like we can get so much from the Drekana and so much from the Rashi and so much from the Hora. So we want to examine all those charts to as much time as we possibly have if we want to understand the person completely. By studying just one of these charts, we'll see part of the person's nature and life. But we get such a much completer picture of important things if we look at all four of these first Vargas. Okay? And again, why is our life different from the person born a little bit before or after us? Why are we different? It's because of these Varga charts. We can't get it all from the Rashi chart. We have to look at Vargas. Thank you.